Alright, what is up guys? Welcome back to another video. And in this video, we'll be talking about what makes Moonlit Fantasy good. And if you like this content, do make sure to subscribe to the channel, cause otherwise, that'd make me really sad. And let's try and set a like goal for 400 likes. Intro. So Moonlit Fantasy has been my favorite new isekai from the past split. And I feel it's a lot better than what people are willing to give it credit on. Unless you have been just living under a rock. You've come to understand that isekais have just been running the market, whether it's because it's relatively easy to make a new, popular isekai, or of how commercially viable it is for selling merch. But it's clear to me, that being an older anime fan, that companies are quicker to pick up an isekai over allowing a different genre or a different idea to come in. It seems that companies have come to a gentleman's agreement of some sort, and they have all agreed to take turns in making a new isekai to sell to anime fans. Which I understand, because it's safe to remake a certain product that you know is proven to work over a product that you have no idea how it's going to turn out. Like whenever I hear a new isekai come out, it's like a little rush of dopamine is just going to my head, because I know I'm just going to watch it. Isekais are just my guilty pleasure. I don't know what it is. They're probably your guilty pleasure as well. But what I don't like is the steep drop of quality between them, where there's a clear big three where your OG animes are going to be at, and then there's like a middle ground where you put like your really outstanding new generation animes coming out, and then you know the rest of them, and then so on and so on. But for isekais, that's not the case. It's either you're part of the big mainstream wave, or you're like the super obvious knockoff brand. And I feel like this is the case for most people, except for if you're just like new to the genre, or just one of the trash bags who just consume every piece of isekai. I feel like I'm roasting myself right now. But I really just mean like for the people who can't tell the difference between a Katarina and a Maple. That line between quality of isekais and that second-hand trash. Like I feel like there's a clear line of quality isekais, and then like the second-hand trash where you get closer and closer to recycling the same stuff each year. Wait, hold on, let me fix this. This line is pretty defined to me, and I think we can all guess where most animes or most isekai animes would fall. Overlord, Slime, Shoot Hero, SAO, Dr. Stone, ReZero, Lock Horizon, No Game No Life, Saga of Tanya, Konosuba. All of these are more mainstream line animes and have a serious following behind them and a more intense story-based world in general. On the other side of the line, we have the other copycats or the bland ones. And if you're an avid isekai connoisseur, you'll notice we have a few animes missing. But what if I told you this wasn't a line, but actually a Venn diagram? Venn diagrams are popularized. So Venn diagrams are popularized because they have a logical relations between sets. On the left side are the animes that are different and do something for the most part completely unique. And I define it as they did something that isn't or has not yet been replicated in the market. So for example, Overlord and Saga of Tanya, they're both a show where the main leads are basically the villains. And they might just say, well, Overlord came first, so Saga of Tanya is the clone. But actually, that's not really the case. From that similarity, Tanya replaces and modifies the source material. Like we know who sent her there. We know the supporting human characters are vastly different. Tanya was given a more intellectual opponent throughout the entire anime, and the short-term and long-term goals are different but similar enough to where you can compare them accurately. Meaning Tanya is vastly different when you really look at the show, even if the main lead seems very similar. And what isekai can say they have a military general, psychopathic lolly with the power to destroy a country. But back to the diagram. On the right, there are the ones that don't feel unique enough and haven't yet really branded strong enough to show a difference or show why they're different. These are the shows that seem to have a lower budget, and because of that, they have fewer episodes. They also have, because of the fewer episodes, reused color palettes, character designs that have very similar to other ones, if not identical. Other characters just don't look good in general. Plot points and dialogues not making any sense. Like, I will say they're not outright bad. Well, most of them are not outright bad. The Venn diagram is a quick way to really show the difference between ideas and really usually tells you how great the anime is. But never have I felt that an isekai could drastically change positions from one side of the spectrum to the other. Not until we talk about Moonlit Fantasy. So understanding the rules of the world. Now to understand the world, we'll have to look at episode to episode and explain the importance of what happens and why it's so good. good. So episode 1. So episode 1s are usually used to explain the surroundings and let us know who the main lead is. So the episode starts out with us meeting Masumi Makoto, our main lead, and he gives us a nod to notable isekai tropes, whether it's Truck-kun being beamed away, a goddess asking for help, and a village loving the hero having a sexy harem. But he also admits that that might be the trope and that might have been what he thought an isekai journey would be. But he also says that his experience was very different, showing his heroines, his encounters with the villages, and his overall painful adventure so far. So this is important. So we come and think it's going to be a clone of a better isekai or a more established isekai. Makoto is outright telling us in the first 30 seconds of the first episode that it's not going to be like any isekai we've known up to this point. Makoto is more of a misfit rather than an actual hero. The intro plays and it sounds like Makoto, but it's actually Sudo, the artist. The music sounds like a folk song with playing of a samurai movie, but like the remix version of that, if you will. What I like about the intro is that it's simple and how it's on theme with the actual show and the brand. Having the characters we'll be seeing in the show, how Makoto is going to be in pain throughout the anime, and highlighting the 3 main leads. Makoto isn't played by a super famous voice actor unless you count 2018. His voice actor is played by Hane Natsuki, who is the voice of Tanjiro in Demon Slayer. In this show, he gets to be a bit more loose with the role and show a bit more personality, rather than just be a serious shonen main lead. Well, semi-serious. So Makoto gets sent to another plane, and now he's in front of Tsukiyomi. And I will notice his name looks awfully familiar to our main lead. But getting to the point, his parents are from another world, and they promised the goddess of their world that they would give up what was the most important thing to them as payment, meaning their child. But all I heard from this dialogue is the middle child was the favorite child. This is a rare win for the middle children, myself included. So either he goes to the other world or one of his sisters has to go. He agrees to go, but only if, and before he can even finish the sentence, Tsukiyomi knows exactly what he's thinking, and he's just like, I got you fam. Deletes all his browser history and any products he has. Tsukiyomi already proving he's one of the homies. But before they can finish, the goddess takes him away. And man, this goddess is a bitch. So first she disrespects this man to his face after asking him for help, saying how ugly he is as well, and just being disgusted by everything about him, then gives him the basic ability to read and to speak a language in the rudest way possible, and also taking out the fact that he can't speak human basically. Lastly, puts him far away from all the other heroes and then sent him off, but not just sending him off, but hoping this man falls to his death. The anime is doing all they can at the beginning to make sure you hate her, but before he dies, Tsukiyomi drops back in and explains he's been having this weighted clothes on the entire time feeling basically, so he releases that off of him, making him basically a Saiyan and OP in a couple of different ways, also explaining he's part of his family, which I saw that shit coming from the beginning, and also telling him he won't be around for like another century to help him, but then gives him another power up basically. So after he's done walking for days, he sees the pig girl being attacked. He rescues her, but accidentally kills the dog beast that was attacking her. She tells us our new quest to go defeat Shin, basically. But we first learn about magic, and that he's also a powerful level 1. So the second part of episode 1 is where we get the appreciation of what Moonlit can be. He battles Shin, and he just starts wailing on her basically, just punching her. And this isn't out of character, like I would say it is for like a lot of other characters or isekai characters to just be like fighting essentially really well. But it actually isn't out of character, and really the reason why it's different for him and why it's okay and makes sense is because he wasn't very surprised when he got transported to another world at the beginning with Tsukiyomi. Also, a lot of his like reactions up to the point haven't really been really expressive. He's been kind of cold in a way, and he already seemed like he was used to fighting, which we're giving more detail as to why. But Shin then traps him in the cube of illusion, where he just drowns in happiness, where his crush asked him out, but it plays out with both what really happened and what he wanted to happen. So the plan doesn't work. Tsukiyomi gave him a special OP ability to manipulate anything around him. The battle ends with Shin getting into a contract with him. What I like here is that it didn't get to the point where he just simply overpowered Shin and made her like submit basically, but rather this happens because of Shin's own desire and Makoto not wanting to kill her. Shin, or Tomo, is played by Sakura Ayane, who's Yotsuba, Araka, and Saki, which to me is kind of like a perfect casting of what Tomo the character like is. A good supportive character, very fun, and has a pretty distinct personality. So good casting overall. So episode 2. Episode 2 is kind of about the demi-planes. So they explain what exactly the demi-planes are, and then they get the orcs to work for them, which leads to Makoto being a father.
What the fuck? You are the father!
Hilarious. Next, we get the dwarves and the black spider of disaster. Shin rescues the dwarf that is being chased by the spider, but she intentionally lures the spider back, play out some samurai movie in her head that she saw. The spider is drawn by the power of Makoto's blood and is attracted by it. So he ends up fighting the spider, and this masochistic spider is loving every second of it. The spider is just drinking him and just drinking him up, but he gets really mad about it, and then he goes into his rage mode and he ends up blasting the shit out the spider. But because of the regeneration the spider has, it was too strong. Shin jumps in the middle of this and then gets her to make a contract with him. Episode 3. So we get Mio added now to the party. He meets the rest of the subjects and they see the new village. It's also hinted more that the people of the world know the goddess and know that she's an asshole. Now this is the episode where they explain why everyone talks about his appearance so much. And it's not because he's just ugly, but that his aura is like 5 demon kings walking around. It's very intense and scary, essentially. And he speaks a different language as well. Not like Japanese, but it sounds like some type of demon talk, essentially. Now, the rest of the anime feels like a mixture of Overlord, How Not to Summon a Demon Lord, and Isekai Smartphone. This being episode 4 through 8. The reason why I mix in all the animes is because in Overlord, it's kind of like that scene where Ainz is now trying to be like an adventurer and trying to find out some information. That's essentially what he's doing the entire time, like undercover. And then it's also like How Not to Summon a Demon Lord, because more of the wackier adventures that happen, essentially, but these feeling more like an actual comedy. And then Isekai Smartphone kind of more like the slice of life element of it, essentially. Episode 9 starts to bring in more serious elements to the show. So in these episodes, he's been so overpowered, and knowing how much overpowered he is than everybody else, that's why it really just does feel like another alternate version of what Overlord could be, essentially. So episode 9 starts and he brings in a more serious element into it. So up until now, he's been using a bow as his main weapon, and it's been shown how outstanding he is at the bow. Unlike in Fate, where they just mention Shiro's just this godlike archer, but they never really show any proof of him or really explain anything about that. Here we learn from Tomo how serious his bow obsession kinda is. What he does essentially is completely dissolve himself into the surroundings and imagine himself as the target, and then he dissolves into the world, and dissolving in this world is seen as a death. So to Tomo and Mio, it looks like he's just committing suicide every time he's shooting a bow, or focusing on shooting with a bow. Tomo explains it as the form of reincarnation, absurdly increasing his mana each time because of the death, each time increasing the demi-planes as well. At this point, he's on the same level as the goddess. And then by the end of episode 10, we learn more about his parents and exactly how they might have gotten to the other world. But then the episode concludes with Tomo's death, or really not death, but her being very, very injured. I compare it to like Shion's death a little bit in season 2 because of the reaction it had on the series in general, and really the decision making the main character had to face. But what makes it different is how we get to see and hear the thoughts of the killer, and we're also reliving the moments of the citizens up to their point of death, causing Makoto physical and emotional pain until he breaks, essentially. When he does meet back up with the killer, like other big titled animes, he goes for revenge, looking like the demon lord he was really meant to be. What makes the scene so unique though is the dialogue the two have. The adventurer can't understand what he's saying, but Makoto is letting his true feelings just take over. And this scene is also made more dramatic because of how desaturated the actual image is. And then it's only like resaturated after he kills her. So he kills her and then he cries over the death. Not necessarily her death, but death in general, because that's how he remembers in his other world, in his past world. That's how you should be treating death, as a sad thing, not a move on with your day type of thing. He goes back to mourn the death and tries to improve upon the city, but it's sort of a weird thing. Like, first, no one is blaming him for the deaths that happen, which, isn't crazy, but it's sort of weird. I know in Slime they didn't blame Rimuru for what happened, and Overlord they definitely would never do that, but it definitely does feel a little bit different. No one in the Demi-Planes are actually really sad about the death either, about anyone that died. They show little to no emotion, which is only really noticed by him, that he's the one that's really hurt or feeling guilty about what's happened. Episode 12. Episode 12 is by far the best episode. At the end of episode 11, he's sent to the front lines by the goddess to get in a battle between humans and demons. In front of him is the level 900 adventurer that was teased in episode 3, Sophia, with the help of Mitsurugi or Lancer. The battle was intense, but made sense why he didn't necessarily kill them, even if he was like much stronger than they were. By the end, overall it's a very satisfying end to the season, and by the end of the episode, he gets his second child. And we get a look into season 2. Now, what made episode 12 even more amazing is how it's not necessarily in line with the source material. How this one, to make it a good episode, had to change a couple things. So from that aspect, it's even a better episode than what it really is from the first look. So why is it different? The main lead voice actors are getting to play a role that's a bit more fun, with having the possibility of it being a bigger role in their careers. Like, the role is different, but close to what the people also know them best as. So what I'm trying to say here is that they all have defining roles in their career, but I would say for 2 of them, they haven't been main roles. They've been more supporting roles. But in this anime, they're allowed to be given a main role and to go a little bit outside of like what they're known for and really stand out even more. And because I think how good this anime could be, that makes it even better on their, career resume, essentially. They can say, I played this main lead character, not like this supporting character, essentially. Except for maybe Tanjiro, but still, he only has a couple that are really like big, And that's mainly just Demon Slayer, I'll be honest. So now let's talk about the Demi-Plane. The Demi-Plane is different from Tempest. Even though Demi-Plane is more in line with the blueprint of what Tempest is, it's different. Both have citizens work on it, but the Demi-Plane is just much bigger. Tempest, though, looks nicer, and it feels more rewarding when it does, get finished, or when something new is added to it. Because of how good the world building of Tempest is, they got a spin-off series because of it. Tempest is a city that can be located and has to live alongside its neighboring nations and creatures. Demi-Plane is different because it's more of a hiding place, and it doesn't have to deal with national politics. Now we're going to talk about the Rage Mode. The Rage Mode is something similar to what they have in Shield Hero. Makoto has a noticeable rage boost similar to Shield Hero. I say similar because how they're both triggered due to their emotional state. Now, as far as the difference, Shield Hero's rage boost is kind of more of a curse. That's a curse on himself and curse to people around him. While Makoto could be an evil, murderous dictator if he let his rage boost get out of control, essentially. Weapon choice. Now, this one is an interesting choice, and I wish more shows would try to opt to do a more creative or a different approach. In most shows, the first weapon choice most heroes go for is just the sword. It's obvious. If I were to give it a rating of how many times I've seen it in a fantasy world, it's the 80% chance you always go for sword first. But Makoto's favorite weapon is the bow. A weapon I never seen used, especially in the main lead role. I've seen a gun plenty of times before, but never a bow, which makes him stand out even more. I guess that means you can call him the bow hero, or a part of the archer class. And with him being the only notable lead with a bow, he's now in his own lane. Weaknesses, or simply the power scaling. Now, as far as a weakness, this hero has a few noticeable ones that you guess could put in the power scaling, being his inexperience, which can lead to his enemies catching him off guard and him not knowing spells, essentially. He doesn't have battle experience. He also can't heal himself at all, basically. That means when he's in a battle and he gets injured, it's fatal. At this moment, he's basically the strongest person that we know in the anime, but there are high-level adventurers and high-level opponents that can beat him. The power scaling is still kinda sus. Like, he can be OP, but he needs to be toned down a bit for me to really take this anime or take fights seriously. Or if they're gonna go this route, they have to go more of an overlord route and you having to know a lot of other supporting characters and really being invested in their story. But I don't think it's gonna go that route. The importance of the names. So the servants that get a name have their powers increased. Now you can maximize the power that you give them if you pick out the perfect name, but both Tomo and Mio and even Shiki do not care. They rather just have a natural name over having more power. Also, it doesn't drain anything from the caster, unlike in Slime. And then another one, adventurers. Adventurers are just really corrupt. I think it's clear that the adventurers are not meant to be seen as heroes, but more as hired crooks. Not evil, but they're morally corrupt and it can be swayed easily by money. They're kind of like mercenaries for hire, who are not morally above doing some very shitty things. Stealing, kidnapping, enslaving, child laboring, abusing, lying, drug dealing. That all happens in the first season. The only good thing, torturing. I forgot about that one. Oh gosh, I almost forgot. The only good ones are the ones that are captured and then released by our hero. This further continues with Lime and Sophia, who you can say are good adventurers, but they still fall in the category of corrupt adventurers. The point is, the adventurer role is much different from almost every isekai there has been around. Sure, they do quest and they get famous because of doing the quest and how strong they are, but none of them are really good people or have good moral standards. Even if some of them have just reasons, they're all just kind of corrupt. They're all kind of shitty citizens. Now, I think the citizens here are done some of the worst comparatively in like the tier 1 isekai. So Slime, Konosuba, Overlord, Shield Hero, Saga Tanya, Log Horizon, Musho Tensei, they all do it better than this anime. But really, I'm gonna highlight Overlord and Slime since it's more of a civilization isekai world rather than maybe the RPG or the pure just fantasy world, or even shonen for that matter. So Moonlit Fantasy brought in the Alkes, spider people, lizard men, dwarves, orcs, dark elves, forest ogres. These races are nothing but mindless background pieces, but more than that, no one from the races are fun or really have any distinct personalities or any good personalities to begin with, except for two elves, that being Aqua, wow that's funny, and Eris. I think those two, mainly Eris, are the only good supporting characters that they have. Well, I guess Emma's good too as well, but because of Slime, I've been spoiled and now I want all these background pieces to have personality and individual characteristics. In Slime, I can tell each goblin on screen apart, as well as having background goblins having different features. And I was going to say in defense that, oh, it's because Slime had like 50 some episodes worth of content, but actually no. Even when they all were like low-level goblins, you still knew who was Gapta or who was the chief. Overlord gets away with having to introduce new races because he already knew all the races, and he wasn't dropped into this position not knowing different races or building this chemistry. Even with them now talking, he could guess how they would react. What's even better is whenever they did react, I actually wanted to hear them talk, unlike 90% of the other isekais. So for that, I give Moonlit the lowest scoring in the top tier side of the genre, but it's still better than all these animes in comparison to background characters and overall just atmosphere, but still it's not great. Drip. Three main characters have a little bit of drip on them. Sophia and Lancer are cool as well, I guess, but that's it. Even though their drip scale isn't high, I do like the trio, so I had to include them. Source material. So the source material to this anime is a bit jumbled up and could be confusing if you're going to anime to manga, but I think the anime director did an amazing job in separating what needs to be included rather than just going strictly off the source material. With only having 12 episodes to work with, if he went strictly off the material, it wouldn't be a good first season. And if he rushed it, then it would be even worse. So by that metric, he did a good job. So this is how you should read it. Chapter 1 through 28. Maybe 27 you can cut off, parts of 28. But the real difference up to this point in the manga versus the anime is the highlighting of his human friends in his past world. Some good characters are lost and not shown in the anime essentially, but it would slightly give you a different opinion of the main lead, so I understand they didn't want to add it or they were saving it for season 2. Then you start back at chapter 33 to 46. Then you skip to chapter 53 to 59, this being the first part of episode 12. The reason why you get away with this and it not seeming as big as a mess is the writing. The writing did not have a scene where Makoto or any other of his party members were forced to interact with the other heroes, so the director separated the season 1 to make it just Makoto's point of view and is going to probably highlight the other heroes and the Goddess War in season 2. The in-between parts being chapter 29 and 32 that I didn't mention in the first season, and 47 through 52 are Hibiki's and to a lesser extent Tomaki, their point of view essentially. Hibiki being someone who knew Makoto from his past world, who was actually at his school, who knew a bit about his love life essentially, who knew he was kind of actually popular at his school. When you look at an anime like this, it shows why a good director is important, who understands a material and understand why it's necessarily good. I think if you just did like strictly off of source material, first 30 chapters, just strictly off of that, it wouldn't be as good. Even if you went first 40 chapters, it wouldn't be as good. There'd be a cutoff point you're like, who are these people? I have no real good interaction with them or introduction to them. It would have felt like half an anime essentially. So that's why, even though it looks a mess, when I explain it with all the numbers, it's actually a lot better. Now I want to quickly highlight Tomo and Mio, because I don't think you really got to understand them as characters and what their roles are. So first, Tomo. Now Tomo's role in the show is meant to play as a negotiator or another leader, or basically Makoto's strength. She makes the decision on his behalf without his permission all the time. Like here, after she realizes what the demi-planes are, she has a drink with the chief and gets the villagers to work for him. Similar to this scene in Slime, which is understandable why it's a little bit similar, but the context is a little bit different. She also negotiates with the dwarves and the spider, and then comes up with a lie that doesn't lead to a bigger conflict. She does this to benefit Makoto, which also benefits her. But she's meant to show him how to become a leader, essentially, but also show her personality, whether it's misquoting a samurai line or getting on Makoto's nerves with references only he would know. Out of anyone there, she's gonna know him the best, which is further highlighted by her ability to see memories. When you think of other semi-main leads or other supporting characters, she's easily at the top of the list with a lot of the other better ones as well, because of her interaction and what she's meant to do in the anime, which makes her death in the end that much more impactful, and also understandably how it triggers his rage form. Now Mio. Now Mio's role at the beginning is kind of like a comedic love interest. She starts out being very overprotective to then going with the comedic punches as they're rolling through with the anime, realizing just how much overpowered she is from her competition, really any competition. It's like having Albedo from Overlord with her doing what Ain said when it came to humans. Like here she plays around with what Makoto says and just decides not to fight because she knows her and Tomo would just destroy everything in sight. So instead she plays along, gets the money out of her opponents rather than just beat them up. Mio is a comedic yandere masochist who stayed with him at the beginning because he was the only one who could give her pounding. I could have rephrased that, but it was consensual, so again, I could. But still, she did have some sort of character development by the end of the anime, even if you didn't necessarily recognize it right away, she does. Final thoughts. My final thoughts on the anime is that it's cute, fun, and is able to translate to comedy and slice of life, making it a very versatile anime. It may not exactly have a shonen-like plot at the beginning or a more serious defined plot, but it would rather keep people entertained with them driving the boat rather than people's expectations driving the boat for them. I like how it was able to do a lot of tropes, but be defined in its own style. Also, I like how they did something that Spirit Chronicles did, that being having the main lead's crush or old crush, but they both take a very different approach. I would say Moonlit did the better approach. Instead of having a sad flashback the entire time or waiting till the last episode to actually show her or bring her here, she's put into this world as an alternate version who does things differently than what he remembers she would do, also keeping their relationships very much differently and putting it in a more supportive role, with the possibility of him being able to tap into his rage form, essentially, if the plot depends on it. If she's in danger or some emotional plot is needed for her to be there, but not necessarily her having to be there, essentially, if you understand what I'm saying here. Needing her to be in the plot to move the anime forward like it did in Spirit Chronicles. I think this anime has the potential of being a 4 out of 5 anime. It was well written and doesn't have a lot of plot holes like SAO or some other actual big title animes, and has a unique design and personality for most characters, and I do say mostly the main leads. Unlike a number of other isekais, and it also removes a lot of unnecessary information, unlike a lot of shows. The voice talent is top notch. It's a little bit experimental, and they get to go a little bit outside of their range of characters. As for animation, it's more in the medium range, with the fights and color palettes kind of being a little poor at times. But if the next season is animated like the last episode, we might have to raise the expectations for this one. As an isekai, there's about a handful that can actually say they're better than Moonlit Fantasy. It would roughly be outside the top 10, maybe like around 15. I think the comedy with C-tier characters kind of ruins the anime for me a bit. I think the main lead needs a little more solo time away from Tomo and Mio to hold his hand. I think the rage factor is pretty good and pretty big, because I think it can really dramatically change the main lead. Since the release of the anime, the manga has been updated more regularly and has been put more in like the top upcoming animes list, not in like the tier 1 category where like Demon Slayer and like Chainsaw Man would be at, but it's still doing good is what I'm trying to say. What also might hurt it is the best scene looks too familiar from other anime scenes, even if it's, presented a little bit differently, which is why it's not necessarily ready to move to the 8 out of 10 category for some people, including myself, but I do trust it's going to get there eventually, unlike Isekai Mao letting me down once again. Lastly, I will say some episodes did just feel flat in comparison, especially when you look at episode 12 to some of the other episodes, like episode, I want to say 8 and 9, just look very flat in comparison. But yeah, the potential is high. And that's what I think makes Moonlit Fantasy good. Hope you guys will enjoy watching it. As always, do make sure to leave me a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I probably will be talking more about this anime in better detail if I talk about the manga or even season 2, so stay tuned to that as well.